He walked in to give money. He walked out with a past he never expected to see again. A wealthy entrepreneur visited a nursing facility to announce a major donation. He thought it would be a routine event with cameras, handshakes, and a tax document to sign. But in one quiet corner, he heard a voice that froze him in place. A voice he hadn't heard since childhood. A voice he thought was gone forever. It was his adoptive mother, a woman who had vanished from his life 3 decades earlier. The man at the center of this story is David Brennan. He built a global logistics company over the course of 20 years. He started with nothing. He had no biological parents in his life as a child. He was adopted at age 5 by a single woman named Miriam Johnson, an African-American schoolteacher in Detroit. She was in her late 40s when she adopted him. She raised him in a small apartment. She was strict about education, manners, and honesty. She never had much money, but she always made sure he ate, studied, and slept without fear. When he turned 18, Miriam encouraged him to pursue college on a scholarship. He moved to another state. They stayed in touch at first with holidays, short phone calls, and occasional letters. Then life moved fast. He started a business. He traveled often. He lost contact. The phone number changed. A card he sent was returned. He later said he assumed she moved south after retirement. Years turned into decades. He became a multimillionaire. He served on nonprofit boards. He funded literacy programs and initiatives in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for kids in urban communities. But he never found out what happened to the woman who gave him his start. One day, he agreed to visit a long-term care facility in Chicago. It was called Ridgeview Senior Residence. He planned to announce a donation to support elder care programs and staff training. The facility manager gave him a tour before the press arrived. They walked through a common area, then down a hallway lined with wheelchairs and walkers. As they passed one room, he heard a faint humming. It sounded like a tune he remembered from childhood, a lullaby Miriam used to sing. He paused. The manager continued talking unaware. David stepped toward the doorway. A woman in a recliner faced the window. Her hair was mostly gray. Her frame was smaller, shoulders sloped, hands folded across her knees. He said her name quietly. Miriam. At first, she did not respond. Then she turned her head an inch. Her eyes focused slowly. She whispered his childhood nickname. Davy? He felt his chest lock up. He walked into the room. She reached for his hand with faint strength. He knelt beside her chair. A nurse came in, startled by the scene. Staff confirmed she had been at Ridgeview for almost 10 years. Public assistance paid for her care. She had no listed family contacts. Her file showed she once taught elementary school. It mentioned a foster son decades earlier, but no follow-up. David stayed after the cameras and board members left. He canceled his next appointment. He asked staff for private time with her. They brought her a blanket and closed the door. Over several hours, they talked in pieces. She had retired early after an injury. She lost her apartment after medical bills piled up. She lived with a distant cousin for a short time. She eventually lost track of his address and phone number. She said she tried to reach him, but every lead came up cold. He admitted he stopped searching after a few failed attempts. Life, he said, moved too fast and too far. The next day, David contacted his legal team. He arranged to cover all costs for her care immediately. He met with the nursing home board to discuss improvements for residents with no family ties. He asked that her room be upgraded to a private suite. He brought in new furniture, a television, and a photo of the two of them from his high school graduation. Within a month, he had her transferred to a specialized assisted living facility closer to his home. He visited often, sometimes daily. He read to her. He played the old records she loved. He introduced her to colleagues and friends who had only heard about his childhood in passing. He also created a charitable fund in her name, the Miriam Johnson Foundation for Foster Youth and Aging Caregivers. The fund supports children in foster care and older adults who spent their lives teaching or caregiving with limited retirement resources. He contributed an initial $5 million to launch the project. He said in an interview later that year that the donation he intended to make, that day was just a number on a form until he saw what real absence looks like. He also said finding her was not luck. He used the word overdue. This story raises questions about connection, aging, and responsibility. Thousands of older adults in long-term care facilities have no contact with relatives. Some are there because of financial hardship. Others lose ties over time due to relocation, illness, or simple disconnection. Many caregivers, especially teachers and foster parents, reach retirement without strong support networks. It also highlights the journey of adopted children and foster families. Not every adoption leads to lifelong communication. Separation can happen without anger. Years can pass while each side assumes the other has moved on. Yet the bond formed in early life can remain as strong as ever under the surface. David Brennan's story points to a wider issue in elder care. Facilities often serve residents who once cared for others but now lack advocates. Without someone to speak for them, their histories and relationships can vanish into paperwork. His decision to use his influence and resources to help her personally and launch a foundation brings attention to people who are easily overlooked. Retired educators, adoptive parents, and foster caretakers. It shows how one rediscovered connection can turn into something broader and structural. Policy experts note that as the population ages, stories like this may become more common. More adults will need long-term care. More families will experience years of silence only to discover a parent or guardian living in a facility without support. His example also speaks to philanthropy. Donations often focus on programs for youth or technology, but elder care infrastructure, especially for low-income seniors, continues to face funding gaps. By redirecting attention to caregivers from earlier generations, he rebalanced his giving in a very public way. The day began as a professional obligation. It ended with the return of a relationship he thought he had lost. He planned to sign a check. Instead, he signed medical papers, transfer forms, and estate documents to ensure his adoptive mother lived out her years with dignity. He could have walked past her room. He could have missed the quiet tune completely. He could have donated funds without stepping beyond the lobby. But he stopped. He heard. He acted. The reunion did not erase the 30 years they spent apart. It did not change the fact that she navigated illness and instability alone for a long time, but it created a new chapter grounded in responsibility rather than regret. Their story does not rely on dramatic rescue. It rests on recognition. A wealthy man met the woman who once fed him, taught him, and guided him toward the life he now leads. She gave him a start when she had little to spare. When he finally found her again, he returned what he owed in the only currency that mattered: attention, action, and respect. The foundation that carries her name continues to support children in foster care and the elders who once cared for them. Its mission is simple: no caregiver should disappear into a system that forgets them. In the end, a donation meant for strangers revealed the person who shaped his life. The story reminds us that the most significant acts of generosity sometimes begin with listening, remembering, and walking through one more doorway than planned.